Welcome to Annette on Life, Liberty, and Happiness, a podcast where we talk about the Constitution, history, politics, and pretty much anything else I want to talk about. This podcast can be found on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, and YouTube. YouTube, you go to youtube.com/Annette Talks so you can see us as we talk. And today, this is a very special episode because I'm here in person in the studio, aka my office, with David Greaves. Hi, David.
Hi, Annette.
And just full disclosure, David is my brother-in-law, but he's also written a book, which don't look at the picture because this is not the official book, called The Sleepers by David Greaves. And the reason I decided to have David on, other than just the fact that he's my brother-in-law, is that this book is got some political overtones, pretty strong political overtones. So you said it's a dystopian...
It's a sci-fi dystopian suspense thriller.
There you go.
Very political.
It is. And I read the first version, I don't know how many years ago, 4 or 5 years ago.
It's been 6 years.
Okay.
And that one was even more in your face political. So this is more sci-fi, and you gotta read a little bit more into it.
Right. But it's a fun read, although I'm not going to spoil the ending, but I think that there should be alternate ending options, because I was expecting a slightly different ending and hoping for something different, but you're going to have to, well, you can't read it right now because you're just podcasting it, right?
Yep. You can listen to about 2 chapters every week, between 20 and 30 minutes. I put them on my website, which is sleepfreeinc.com. And then from there, you can find links to YouTube and Spotify and Stitcher. I learned all that from Annette. Thanks, Annette. But yeah, that way you can listen to it, and we'll get to the end of the book probably in another 6 months or so. I do 1 podcast a week.
So it's a fun way to do it. It's kind of like, that reminds me of the old days with radio.
Yes.
I really love, I missed that whole, what's going to happen next week? Tune in next week for the next chapter. There's always a cliffhanger, right, at the end. But that's one of the things that I like about podcasting, is that it reminds me of the old radio days. Because I can remember being in the back of my mom's and dad's station wagon and listening to the radio on long trips. Yes, I'm old. But this was back before the internet, before Wi-Fi, before all that stuff. That wasn't even a gleam in someone's eye. Well, maybe it was a gleam in someone's eye. But so I really like the genre. So, but you are going to eventually publish the book, hopefully?
Yes, that's the goal, is share it through the podcast and then get it published. And I've been trying to find an agent for that. So I've rewritten the book several times. So you've read an old version. You were probably the second or third reader of an old version. And then I've rewritten it after hiring people to help me make it better and make it more concise, to the point.
Right. And it's funny, whenever I read a book, and I had the same issue with Dinesh D'Souza, I had him on my show. I got Dinesh's number in my phone. Should I call him? Anyway, when I read his book, he's got such a distinctive voice that I heard his voice in my head. And so I was lucky enough to get an actual printed copy. I have to admit, I'm a in my hands book kind of person, as opposed to reading on my phone. And so I was glad to have it, because I like to lay in bed and read, and I don't know, it's just different. Maybe again, that's the old school part of me. But so as I was reading the book, I was hearing your voice in my head. Anyway, so you said you should listen to a podcast episode. So I did, and I went back and I listened to chapter 1, and I'm like, this is a lot like when I read it, because I know you so well, and I know your voice so well.
You know my intonation and inflections that I take. Yep. And
the main character, whose name is John, I kept thinking of you as him as I was reading the book. And your wife, my sister's name is Jane, and there's a Jane in the book, so I was picturing her as the Jane. Anyway, it's more fun when you know the author of a book, but it's also a little confusing because you picture them. I had the same problem with my other friend who wrote a book I had her on, and I kept picturing her as the main character. So anyway, but
it helps when writing, but you'll find at times that I'm not really John. So,
No, you're not John at all.
Yeah.
It's just that because I couldn't picture him, I pictured you because you wrote the book.
but when I read, I do John's. John is my natural voice.
Is it?
It is what you get. Yeah.
Yeah. No, you didn't do voices or anything. No, I'm John.
I don't know how far you've gotten, but there are some voices.
Oh, there are?
Yes.
Okay, because I only listened to episode 1.
Okay, no. When you meet Carl, Carl's got a very unique voice.
Oh,
And yeah, Carl's the curmudgeon who teaches John along the way and helps him learn about lucid dreaming. And when you meet his professor, he's got a slight Brazilian accent.
I guess I need to
Yes.
listen to some more episodes.
And then when we get to Jane, we'll have some fun there. You know.
All right. So for those that have not been listening, what is the premise of the book?
Okay, so the book is called The Sleepers. And it's about near future. So the time frame is kind of 2072 is when it starts, and then it'd be through the 2080s. So imagine in a couple generations from now. And there's a technology that's developed in about the next 10 years. So put in the next decade that this technology comes out. And the technology allows one person to sleep for another person. So I'm a very sleepy person. I know Annette's a sleepy person because we come visit her, and she goes to bed before us, and then I go to bed, and then Jane goes to bed.
And you should know that we are recording right now late at night. Well, it's 10:30 my time, which is 11:30 your time, and you've been driving all day.
Yeah, this is the latest I ever want to be awake right now. So I really want to sleep.
Right, and so we're both a little punch drunk, but when I first read the book and when you first told me the premise, my first thought was I want to be one of the sleepers.
Yes.
Because I like sleeping. If I don't get 8 hours, I'm not happy. So, but then after reading the book, I'm like, no, I don't want to be the sleeper.
I know.
And so tell us why, so that you can get people to sleep for you. So then what?
Yeah, so everyone wants to have a sleeper, right? Because you say, well, I can be awake all day. And what happens is this person sleeps for you, and they give you their REM pattern. So that's the rapid eye motion. They give you their dream content in some form, but it's kind of hazy usually. And then they give you this chemical that comes from your body, naturally produced chemical that rejuvenates you. So they give you all that in a rapid download. But in process of doing that, that becomes the sleeper's life. So that's their job in life. So they live their own life. You know, they wake up and their employment is to sleep for another person, and they still have to sleep for themselves.
So it's like 14 to 18 hours of sleep.
18 hours of sleep
every day.
In a day. So while it's great, and while they're paid to do this, it creates this bimodal or dual caste system between sleepers and non-sleepers. We call them clients. And so, well, it sounds great. You say, well, I want a sleeper, man. That is awesome. Or, oh, I want to be a sleeper. You're better like, that's a piece of cake. I want to be a sleeper and be paid to just sleep all day. Then that's when you start to see the metaphor. Because is it really that great to just spend your whole day sleeping? Sounds great on paper, and maybe you might like it, but
and there's an obvious analogy to socialism versus free market, and it comes out in the book. If you're not picking that up in reading the book, you're not paying attention because it's one of those things that sounds really good, but in reality, it's not. And you have the resentment between the sleeper class and the client class. And the sleeper class is like, obviously, it's almost like the haves and the have-nots, and the sleepers are the have-nots. And so the two don't really mix. They're considered completely two different classes.
Yeah, they're basically living in their own segmented parts of the world.
Well, it's almost like the sleepers are the servants of the clients.
And while the clients feel, hey, we've done this great thing by providing for them, they've taken away the value of their life.
Yeah, and if you spend 14 to 16 hours of asleep, then that leaves you, 10, 12 hours awake? I mean, it's not enough to have much of a life. I mean, you're supposed to do everything that you want to do during that time.
And so the main character, John, it starts with his childhood on purpose so that you can experience what it's like to be a child sleeper. So, he has to go to school and then try and compete with the other kids, and yet he has this job where he has to sleep too. So by the time you go to school, and if you want to eat a meal or go to the restroom once in a while, and then sleep for someone, and then sleep for yourself, you've lost your whole day.
Yeah, because you go home and it's like there's no time.
No.
You can't do the sports. You can't do, there's just nothing else. You can't accomplish anything because you're spending all your time sleeping.
Yep.
And so that...
But it's a job. But
It's a
great,
job.
Annette.
It's a job. I know. I mean, so yeah, the idea of sleeping as a job is very tempting, especially right now.
very
I'm super
tempting.
tired. Like,
Yep.
yeah, pay me to sleep. But what do you accomplish from that? There's no fulfillment. There's no.
No, and that's what the protagonist misses is he misses electives as a kid, and as he grows up he doesn't want to miss out on life just sleeping for another person.
And so, where'd you get this idea for this book?
Well, so I was dating my wife, my now wife.
Jane, whose name is in the book.
Jane is in the book on purpose. Jane and John are in the book on purpose. Their names mean something, so you may not have.
Did I not catch?
That's a very deeper meaning in the book.
Oh, I didn't catch on to what the.
We'll have to talk about that. But I was extremely exhausted at all times. We spent our time dating, and then our first 6 months of marriage with me trying to write my master's thesis. And so Jane would tuck me in at night, and then we were on a trip, and we were about to start what I call like real life. Jane's older than me, a little bit.
Oh,
just a little bit.
But she's older than I am.
Oh,
no, let's not go there.
Okay, so we were on this road trip, and I was exhausted as usual. But Jane knows how much I like to get done in life. I worked on this book for years after the kids would go to bed, and she said, "Wow, you just really need someone to sleep for you. You just need a sleeper because you are so productive when you're awake. You can't handle not being productive. If you had a sleeper, just imagine all that you could get done." And I thought about it, and I thought, wow, yeah, if I had a sleeper, gosh, if someone would sleep for me, I would be so productive. It would be well worth the money. So that was the week before I went to start my first real job out of college, and I started writing right after that. So pretty much I wrote down kind of like 20 pages of world building within the next few months, and then I just started piecing it together, and I'd add more and let the story grow, and then I'd slice it back, and then at one point I finally realized if you're going to write a story, you really need to have an outline and a climax and everything. So then I wrote that, and that's how I got going.
So it raises an obvious question. I can't remember this in the book, and maybe it was in the earlier version, but was there ever an implication that only the lower IQ people or the unskilled people should be the ones that are sleepers because they're not going to accomplish anything while they're awake anyway?
Well, that's what's interesting about it. Is it is meant to be to talk about a split in society, but split us in a way that's different than we're used to seeing right now. And that's because you look at how we're being split right now. We're split along ideologies, regardless regardless of race or regardless of wealth. And so you see when it's mentioned very briefly at different parts in the story, but as it starts to split, at first people hire like the lower classes or they hire the jobless who are looking for income, unemployed. But as it changes, people naturally migrate that way. They say, well, I'd rather have that job. That sounds like a better job in life. And so it does form its own dividing line.
So that is kind of like the socialism thing too, that at first, there's a welfare state that's only supposed to catch the people that are unable to work or have some kind of handicap in life, whether it's a physical, mental, or some other reason that they can't work or for a short period of time. And then slowly but surely it expands to, well, why I'm getting a check like with this COVID thing and people are getting more from unemployment than they are from working. Well,
it's very much like,
it's very tempting.
Respect, it's like Atlas Shrugged. When you have all these people working and they say, well, we're going to even up the pay. And then people who are putting in all the extra work say, well, why would I do that? And so you get new norms at that point.
Right. So I could see that, where it's meant to just help the people that really need it. But then it turns into, well, that's much easier. Why would I not just do that? And so then you have all these complacent people who are just fine with just not accomplishing anything. Like there's no way to progress as a sleeper.
That's the real thing. There is no progression, which is damnation, basically.
Right.
So there's a few sleepers in the book. The main character John, and this won't spoil anything because you'll see it in page 2.
All right. So Jane and John, is that like a John Doe, Jane Doe?
Well, so the true meaning of that one is a little spoiler, and I don't remember if I've deleted so many chapters in the book.
Yeah, because I don't remember anything.
I think the chapter it's pretty subtle, but John doesn't have a last name. Did you notice that? Everyone else.
They never mention all I think about is John and his. Well, I shouldn't say.
Yeah.
There's a.
But Ray has a last name.
Yes.
But John does not have a last name, and neither does Jane.
So it's a John Doe, Jane Doe.
Yeah, it's meant to be all of us could end up in this situation, sleepers. But it's also meant to be a call. Ray is named after Ray Bradbury, who wrote like Fahrenheit 451, and so that's one of my favorite dystopians. But John is a call to Brave New World, and in Brave New World, the main character's name is John. And so John realizes that he's, the whole world is celebrating how they've solved the economic crises of our times. And that's why people love being sleepers, because now they have reliability. They have a constant income source, which they want.
Right.
And so while people celebrate that, they say, hey, we got there without being in a dystopian. But in reality, they are in a dystopian. And they don't even realize it. So John realizes, Ray is named after these heroes of the dystopian novels, and yet he is in his own dystopian and can't put it together.
I can't remember that in this version. So
there's a great chapter. It's probably gone. And one of the joys of doing the podcast is after I do the podcast and I share this all with you, and hopefully get we get a few followers, or a few listeners. I have my closest friends and my family right now. I think it's a shout out to all of you. I love you. Then I'm going to share some of the deleted chapters. And that's one of my favorite deleted chapters is the naming.
Cool.
Yeah.
I'll have to tune back in again and hear some of those voices too. So you did the research on this how much of this is fiction and how much of it is close to something that could happen over the next 10, 20 years?
Yeah. So, there's a lot of this I think that could really happen. I mean, our advances in recognizing what we need to recuperate and sleep are already there. So I've fictionalized it, right? We're not ready to borrow somebody's sleep, but there's a lot of really neat things out there about how our bodies recover. There's great information about why we need dreams. And you can read from Freud onwards and see why we need dreams, right? But that's a big part of this book is that it's so important that your body gets some dream content. And I fundamentally agree with that because I think that dreams lets us, kind of replay everything in our mind. Sometimes it feels kind of silly to relive I forgot there was a test. But our body needs that, right? Like every time I'm stressed at work, I have a darn test, and it's always in some, it's almost always like AP literature, and I didn't read the book. I read every book that I was supposed to read AP literature, so I don't know why the nightmare is always not having read the book, but yeah.
It's always that not being prepared.
Yes.
And so for some reason, it always takes us back to school. I don't know why, because we've been out of school for a long time, and yet it's always back to school. And I actually teach college now, and so you would think that would not be a theme, but it does come back. And reading this book was interesting for me because, I've talked to you about my high sensitivity, right? And this is something that I discovered not that long ago, 6 months ago, maybe 7 or 8 months ago. And for those of you that have been watching or listening to the podcast, I did an episode with Matt Townsend, and we talked about high sensitivity. And when I read about it and studied it, one of the characteristics of high sensitivity is that we have these really strong dreams every night.
Oh, okay.
And so every single morning I wake up with dreams that I'm still like remembering and it's funny, I'll lay there and I'm like, oh my gosh. And I'll try and finish the dream in my head because it was so bizarre, or I'll try to understand what was that. And I've always felt like dreams are like there's a crazy man or a drunk man in my head pulling files. Like I picture him in a file room with all my memories, all my life experiences, pulling out these files and just throw them all around. And then they just land and they're like, that's my dream. Like that, because my dreams usually make no sense at all. Like there's no rhyme or reason. I mean, occasionally there is, like you said, with the stress dreams, like anxiety dreams. Or I've had a few times, like one time I quit a job that I absolutely detested. And that night I had a flying dream. And it was awesome. Oh. And so 2 or 3 times I've had really vivid flying dreams. And
So flying dreams are usually considered the first step into lucidity.
Yeah, and you know what? I didn't even know what lucidity meant until I was reading this book. I used to think lucid just meant really vivid.
Yeah.
I think I was confusing vivid and lucid.
Well, because when we use the word lucid, normally we talk about clarity,
Right.
as lucid. But in dreams, we talk about lucidity means that you can control your dreams.
Right. And so when I was reading that and I was thinking about it, I think occasionally I have a lucid dream, but in the book, he can make it happen using a chemical, right?
Yeah.
And then he gets trained, trains himself into it. But so sometimes in life, what I will do is I will wake up or I'm partially awake. I can feel like I'm partially awake and I don't like the way the dream went. And so I will go back in.
Yes.
And so it's almost like I'm part awake, part asleep. I don't even know what you call that. And then I will go in and I will change the way the dream was going.
Yeah.
And so I
that's
think
lucid dreaming.
Okay, then I do that.
Yeah, that's very cool.
It is.
So in lucid dreaming, so the book it's sci-fi, right? So there's some elements of sci-fi, but there's a lucidity index that describes your frequency of lucid dreams and your acuity or your ability to manipulate the lucid dreams. And the main character, he mentors under a lucid dreamer who's a 5C. And that means he's very powerful. That's the top in both. Mm-hmm. And that means that he can control and manipulate his dreams, change any detail he wants, add the sights, the sounds, all the flavors, everything you want, right? And so what Annette's talking about is she'd probably be like a 2B or a 3A if she's starting to dabble more. People who never lucid dream, they never have lucid dreams, right? They don't have these flying dreams. They don't manipulate things in their dreams. They don't realize that they're in dreams. But the best way to enter lucid dreams is actually being extremely exhausted. So when you wake up and when you're in this like half awake, half asleep state, then you're more likely to experience lucid dreams.
Okay.
And that's why you'll later read in the book, for those who are listening along, as he studies and tries to develop a way to help others become lucid dreamers, then he focuses on drug families that would cause you to be more alert. So even though you're asleep, you're more alert, and that would trigger your conscious mind versus your subconscious.
So
mind.
were those real chemicals or were those sci-fi?
Those were a little sci-fi.
Oh, darn, that's what I'm saying. Well, although I saw some article recently and I didn't open it, but it talked about being able to have some kind of a mechanism that would give you what you needed from sleep. And I cannot remember what it was now. Shoot, or did I lucid dream that? I'm just kidding. No, I did see something.
If you get into lucid dreaming, there's a lot of communities, right, and a lot of books.
Really?
Yeah. So I think when I was really trying to dabble with it and understand lucid dreaming for the book, I was in Reddit. Okay, so do you use?
I know what it is, but I've never used it. Yeah.
So there's a Reddit community for lucid dreaming. There's a Reddit community for everything, and you can just scroll through there, and they use the filled method, the wild method, and so the book talks about the wild method, and it's an acronym. But it stands for wake-induced lucid dreaming. So it's kind of like what you've been experiencing.
Okay.
Now, actually, in this house, we were visiting you one time. I was reading all about these, and at the same time, my baby was deciding that he didn't want to sleep ever again. And so you were 2 floors away, but our baby was awake nonstop, and we were exhausted. It was all night long. So we finally get to bed in the middle of the night, and so I was trying all these things. And one of the things you try is you count your fingers. Okay, so I read it on Reddit and then I studied it myself, and you make your own techniques. But it was like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and you practice this motion, and it helps you. In reality, when we're awake, that's very easy to do. But if you've ever tried reading or counting in sleep, it's very difficult, right? So I was downstairs trying to do this, and then in my sleep I ended up doing it, which is really cool. This is just one method. I've gotten a few to work right, and my fingers started basically going like this. I'm like, well, that's not normal. I couldn't count my fingers. There were thousands of fingers, right? And that's how I realized. I said, what? I'm dreaming. I did it.
That's
right?
awesome.
And so then your mind's going to go a million places, because you're going to say, okay, well, what do I try and do? Like I'm in a dream. I can do anything, right? And so that's flying dreams take a certain amount of control, and I think they're kind of like a gateway drug to lucid dreaming. But after you get into it, I mean, the people in these communities are really good at it, right?
Wow.
And so that's why I was so inspired by Carl, the main character who helps John, because he can do anything he wants. And so the more you practice, there are people who get really good at it. And so I've only had a handful, but I've been able to create weapons, create people.
Oh, wow.
You know, I've never had a flying dream till shortly after this experience. I said I wanted to have a flying dream. My wife has flying dreams, and I'm always jealous that she has flying dreams. But
They're
for
awesome,
me,
yeah.
like I couldn't fly. The science said no, you can't fly. So I realized it was a flying dream. Realized I was dreaming, right? And so I just said, well, I just got to do something like Iron Man, right? Like he pushes energy out. I was like, well, that works. That met the science for me, and so I was able to fly. So.
That the frustrating thing for me when I was reading the book and then I would go to sleep and I'm thinking about lucid dreaming was that I was like, well, I want a lucid dream, and then couldn't fall asleep because I wanted to lucid dream. So I'm wondering if people that are lucid dreamers are losing much sleep because they're doing the lucid dreaming, or because I can't lose a lot of sleep.
No, I was not sleeping well the other day, and I thought I'm going to try it because it's a good time when you're not sleeping.
Yeah.
But then I got more frustrated and couldn't fall asleep because I was trying to lucid dream.
Yeah.
So there's a natural balance in there, like when a 2-year-old or 1-year-old is nonstop screaming at you. But
yeah, that's the downside. So a little bit off topic, but well, okay, kind of a lot off topic. But what do you think about? It's late. What do you think about revelatory dreams? Have you ever had any of those, or do you think that's like very few people have those? Like you're receiving revelation. I know it's really off topic.
We're getting late.
I know.
No. There's again, and this chapter. Well, we probably cut that chapter out too because it's not necessarily the story. There's a great chapter about that that'll be in the outtakes. Yeah, one of the things that I'll tell you a little bit about the book and then a little bit about my own personal beliefs.
Okay, excellent.
That's fair because then it'll tie it together.
Good, because I was going to tell you about this anyway, and so after you're done, I have to share why I'm bringing it up.
Okay, good. So I can almost remember the exact lines because it was one of my favorite chapters, but it was about how dream action correlation, basically dream prophecy correlation. And that is, if you have a dream about something, whether it's truly from God or not, does that then lead it to happen, right? So if you have a dream about something, is that dream prophecy or is that dream foretelling, giving you the encouragement that you can accomplish something, right? And so Freud talks a lot about dreaming. He talks about how it's a chance to, kind of get things out of our mind. But when you look at all the histories, all these books, you look at, there's just these great books out there. Freud even talks about it. But, you look at like Julius Caesar and the dream that his wife has a dream that he'll be murdered or whatever, right? So for thousands of years, people have used the dreams as a form of prophecy, right? And then we modern days, we're too good for that, right?
Right.
That's mumbo jumbo. But what the book tries to, why that's in there is because it then ties together and says, okay, well, if dreams create action, what happens if you dream for someone else? So like it becomes their experience. And so that's why it's about lucidity, is if you dream lucidly, could you manipulate the person you're sleeping for?
Right.
And then although it's not true prophecy, not a revelatory experience, it's an opportunity to then manipulate someone and coerce them through their dreams.
Right, and that happens in the book.
Yes. Yeah, there's quite a bit of manipulation as the story goes on. And you do see very early on what it's like to receive someone else's lucid dreams, and when they're not your own dreams, and it's kind of unnerving.
Which is a good reason not to have a sleeper.
Yeah, there's a price to pay, and that's the threat. So that's why everyone in the book who's a sleeper is, kind of tagged. They're cataloged. They get a number. It's the government's way for tracking people that they feel threatened by.
Right.
But now for revelation. So, I strongly believe in revelation by dreams.
So have you had any?
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. I've had a couple that have been precisely as happened, things that I would not predict. The first one when I was a missionary, and I can't really go into it, but it was a warning that this was going to happen so that I would be happy with the event or satisfied with it rather than upset. And it happened exactly as it was shown a few days later.
Wow.
So after that, that's what really opened my mind up to dreams, is because, I might have been a skeptic before, but after that, I thought, oh, no, sometimes this is the way it works.
So do you think that's a spiritual gift?
Yeah, I do.
Because not everyone, I don't have revelatory dreams. But the reason I brought it up was that, and I don't know if this guy's listening or will listen, but I had a complete total stranger who I'm Facebook friends with, but never met in real life, never had any conversations with, didn't even know him because I have like over 4,000 Facebook friends. I probably know a few hundred because of the podcast.
She knows me.
Yeah, I do know him. But I randomly got a message from this guy a few weeks ago saying, I've been having revelatory dreams for the last 3.5 years, and you were in the last one at the very end in conjunction with a specific scripture, like Doctrine and Covenants 134. Did I tell you about this? Mm-hmm. Okay, and I was like, what? He's like, just, take it for what it's worth, but this is basically, it was told that you and this chapter, and I don't know you, so I don't know this section, but I just wanted to pass that on to you. So I was like, what? So I went and looked it up, and it was like, oh crap! Like, it relates to me. It's all about the government and how it relates, and of course I'm very political, and I've been struggling with how do you defend freedom in the last days without. I really want I feel like I want civil disobedience, and yet I've been struggling with, no, you're supposed to stay within the law to fight the law. And this chapter kind of says we believe in obeying the laws, and yet also that governments are not supposed to restrict religious freedom. Anyway, it was like, oh my gosh, Heavenly Father's talking to me through this guy. And so it was really interesting. I've never had an experience like that before. So we've messaged back and forth a little bit, but we don't have any previous relationship.
Yeah.
And so it's so interesting. I think he might have listened to one of my podcast episodes, but we've never had any communication. So I'm like, dude, that's so weird. And so I wish I could have revelatory dreams for myself, but.
Well, I was spending a lot of time reading Doctrine and Covenants 8, 9, 10, 11, right, which is all about Revelations and 6 and related to Oliver Cowdery. Mm-hmm. And then I listened to a bunch of podcasts about it because I was going to give a talk on it and I wanted to understand it better. I've been learning from you on podcasts. And, it was very clear, right, that they said, well, these sections all give you little ideas about how you receive revelation because all of us are different, right? So some people might have revelation by dreams. Some have it through reading the scriptures. Some have feeling in the heart. Some have that whole, if it doesn't feel right, you'll know it. And so, it's important to realize that we all have a different way that Heavenly Father would communicate with us.
Right.
But yeah, isn't 134, doesn't it also talk about how, sorry, I'm shaking the table. How we're supposed to record bad events.
That doesn't sound familiar.
That might occur from grievances and everything. Oh,
they talk about, I think they talk about petitioning for.
Yeah, because it just reminds me of what you do, that you're documenting history as it's
I'll have to go back and look again. But I shared with him, because I received a blessing last year, that, and I won't say what it is, but because he shared that with me, we've been sharing some things, and when I told him that, he's like, oh, okay, I also feel like this. Yeah. And so we're going back and forth, and I'm like, wow, this is really interesting. I mean, we all have to get that confirmation for ourselves, but it's interesting when someone else has had an inspiration for you. I mean, we're really off topic now.
We're off topic.
But I have had a few, actually, it's been cool a couple times when the Spirit has told me something to tell to somebody else.
Yes.
But not through a dream. And so when I heard that it was through a dream, I was skeptical initially. But then when I looked it up, I'm like, this is not a coincidence. And this, so it's just another way to get information sometimes. Because I've had the Spirit just tell me, say this right now to this person.
Yep.
Well, but I was fully awake and it wasn't through a dream. So anyway. But the book is a lot of fun. I still take issue with the ending. I thought something different was going to...
Oh my goodness, Annette.
You guys have got to listen to it because...
So we'll have another visit.
Yes. Maybe we should do one when you finish up the book.
But this is a dystopian, right? This is not meant to make you go home and eat apple pie and feel great in life.
No, you're right.
Because when you look at where our world is right now, and you look at the politics that are happening in America, you don't have a warm, fuzzy feeling. Now, you're a very faithful person, so you try and say, look, things are going to change. I have strong faith in that. But look at your face. You're making the face right now of doubt. So I did not want to write a book that we left going, everything's going to be perfect and peachy. I wanted a book that left you going, this is a dark world, right?
you did. You left it that way.
I wanted a dark world, and I wanted you, because when I read a book like that, most dystopians, I shouldn't say most. Okay, I've read maybe 10 really, really good dystopians, okay? Half of them end positively, half of them don't, right? Half of them end, you're like, oh, is that really our world?
Yeah.
Right? And I think it's important for us to leave a book sometimes feeling that way, because it gets us to do something.
Yes, I see the point to it, but I guess, I'm just used to happy endings, which is 99 out of 100 times.
Yeah, even when we watch Hollywood dystopians, they always give them a happy ending.
Yeah, yes.
Right? That's important, because we don't like to leave the movie theater going,
yeah, because we like to see people overcome and overcome the odds.
It's part of our nature. We feel great about it. Don't listen to this book if you want to feel perfectly happy at all times.
Well, what was also interesting was that because it's in the future, the way you were talking about the stuff that's already happened, like that is happening now, it's like, oh, crap. Like, he's talking about how we're in this socialist country, and it was so scary in that, because it was like, so the things that are happening now just kept happening, nothing changed, things didn't get better, they got worse.
You had that political realignment
the podcast episode I did, right?
It was wonderful, and I loved it, and I've studied political realignment before, and then that book taught me a lot. But we're living the things that we've been afraid of, maybe. And you can follow them to a logical conclusion, or and you can hope that conclusion goes a different way. And American politics change all the time, so 4 years from now, who knows what it'll be. But there's always a strong possibility we'll just keep going more and more down a certain road. And for me, that's where this concept takes you. And you can also read this book, and you can try and not see parallels. You can read a sci-fi book and think, this is a pretty interesting world. What would it be like? But at the same time,
you have to turn your brain off to not see the parallels.
It gets pretty hard eventually.
Yeah, especially for political, like we are. It's like, oh man.
But I wanted to write a book that really mattered.
Well, it did, and it made me think a lot. And just know that when you're listening to the book, people that are going to be listening, that you're going to want to try and lucid dream, and you may lose a little sleep when you do it.
But when you do, then write a little note, say how it went. It's pretty fun to share what lucid dreams you have or what you try.
See, now I'm going to go to bed tonight, and that's going to happen again. It's the same thing.
Yeah, so. Okay. It's a good experience.
All right, so again, tell everyone where we can find your podcast.
So you want to go to sleepfreeinc.com. That's sleepfreeinc.com. And from there's links to YouTube and iTunes and Apple and Amazon to be able to download it. And in case you're wondering, we didn't cover, but Sleep Free Inc. is the company that creates the technology within the book, and so they give you a chance to live sleep free. And so it's kind of a fun way to advertise the book, is through this experience of the company that they're advertising. Come join us. We'll offer you we offer you a sleeper. We offer you the freedom, or if you're in need of a job, we offer you the job of a sleeper. And so I'm offering you a chance to come and get one of the first distribution units now. Start sleeping or start living your life every day awake.
Free. Awesome. Yeah. Excellent. And eventually, hopefully, we'll see the book published as well.
Yes, that's the goal. Thanks, Annette.
And everyone, come check it out. I will also link to sleepfreeinc.com in the show notes of this episode. If you want to see what we look like, and we're here and tired tonight, come to youtube.com/Annette Talks. I believe this will be episode 70 when it posts. So.
And Annette, in case you can't see, Annette's wearing a Darth Vader shirt, which is, whether that was on purpose or not, I assume it was on purpose.
Yes.
Because she knows that my real passion in life is Star Wars. So
It is.
I appreciate the nod, Annette. And
No
recognize it.
problem.
It always makes me feel at home when people wear Star Wars shirts.
All right. On that note, thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having
you
me.
will be back again.
Good.
And by the time you come back, you'll probably have so many followers that you'll be
I might be the 13th. So it'll either way. It'll be awesome.
All right. Thank you for listening to Annette on Life, Liberty, and Happiness, where freedom lovers gather.